Now here once again I start with a very interesting story. How did industrialization start? Did it come all of a sudden? Nothing happens that way. So it could not have been for industrialization. What were those processes involved, or how did actually industrialization came into boom? Before the industrial age, a small little period is called as proto-industrialization. That was the time when the production was done on large scale, when the demands were high, but it was not done in the manner that it is being done today. That is, production was not done at a particular unit. That was called as proto-industrialization. That is a step towards industrialization. Supposing for manufacturing cloth, cotton was taken from one place to another and there little work on it was done, picked up from there, taken to the second unit, there next process was involved, from there to the third one, and then it came lastly to the finishing center. So that was the proto-industrialization. This started in England and Europe because there was large scale demand and production being done, but not in the manner where the production is being done as in industrialization. We see that the expansion of this actually began because the world trade had started increasing. People had started moving from one place to another, and the merchants, they were not able to enter into the towns for production. This is very surprising that there is a great demand of production and the requirement is immense, but the merchants cannot enter the town for production because there were guilds, and you remember the word guild, that is the association. There were guilds who had monopoly over production and they had the right from the rulers to manufacture. That is, a particular guild was allowed to manufacture there, only they could do it. Others, the new ones, the strangers could not enter. So it was a big hindrance. Now we see, when they could not enter the towns, what was the other option left? These merchants, then they penetrated into the rural areas, into the village side, and there the local craftsmen and the artisans were picked up and the production was done in the rural areas. So what have you seen? That during proto-industrialization, the merchants wanted to manufacture but were unable to do it in towns. So they entered the rural areas where the artisans and the craftsmen of the villages got involved in this production. Now why did the people of the rural areas actually got themselves involved into this activity? As you have seen in the previous class 9th book, that in the rural areas, the open fields had disappeared and the commons were enclosed. If you remember, all that land which actually was the property of everybody earlier. That is, anybody could graze their cattle there, they could collect the berries from there, they could do whatever they felt like, because that land belonged to everybody. But because of the onset of industrialization, all this disappeared in the rural areas, and therefore the income of the people who did not own any kind of land or those who had small land actually got hampered. Now this proto-industrialization, when it entered the rural areas, that is, the merchants started coming to the villages for getting things manufactured. supplemented the income of the rural people. So, great for them. They actually were very happy about this proto-industrialization. So came up new sect of people like the stapler and the fuller in the rural areas. And you know the meaning of the stapler and the fuller. Now, these people did their own jobs. That is, the stapler did his own job, the fuller did his own job, and then that particular manufactured item finally reached London, which seemed to be the finishing center from wherein it was sent to other countries of the world. So, that's the beginning of the story of industrialization, which starts with the process called proto-industrialization, wherein the traders had to move to the rural areas because they were not given entry in the towns, and because the people of the rural areas were in need of more income. So, they started with proto-industrialization in the rural areas. And I continue with the story in the next clipping.